called Reverend Lisa, and she was the music director here, and a couple other people that I met there as well. And I got a chance to hear about Reverend Mindy. And now I've had a chance to actually get to know her as well as her partner, and Nikki. And what a team. And interesting, different flavors of the same cosmic stuff. But the main thing I loved about Reverend Mindy was her passion. She walks the walk. That's huge in ministers now. She walks the walk. And the hospitality's been incredible here. I've had a chance to be with Patsy and Steve, and amazing people over there. And today we're going to talk about miracles, as you couldn't have guessed from that beautiful song we just talked about. And miracles, scientists hate miracles. Be quite blunt. Because when a miracle happens, it breaks a law of nature. And scientists get really uncomfortable when laws of nature get broken. Let me give you some examples. But in quantum physics, I should say this, in quantum physics, miracles happen all the time. Let me give you an example. An object can't be in two different places at the same time, right? Wrong. I love that. You can take over. I'm going to take a break.
I like listening to you.
Okay. Brilliant point, though. You're right. So anyway, yeah, let's say, we all know what electrons are. They circle an atom. If nobody's watching the electron, it magically turns into energy waves. So not only is it in two different places at once, it's everywhere at once. Here's a big one, though. Einstein's law of relativity. There's probably no greater law in physics than Einstein's law of relativity. And the pillar upon which that rests is the idea that nothing can go faster than the speed of light. Well, in 1931, two very famous physicists by the name of Schrödinger and Heidelberg proposed a theory called quantum entanglement. In quantum entanglement, if you have a couple electrons circling an atom, they become magically entwined beyond time-space limitations. So even if you were to separate them by a million miles, if you were to push on one of them to go in one direction, the other would instantaneously go in the exact same direction. The problem here for Einstein was the communication was instantaneous, which means it's faster than the speed of light. So Einstein hated this theory of quantum entanglement. At one point he called it spooky action at a distance. Well, in 1981, Einstein was proven wrong. Then they redid the experiment a couple of years ago in Switzerland, where the new cyclotron is. And not only did the two electrons communicate faster than the speed of light, it was 10,000 times faster than the speed of light. If you're going to break a law of nature, you might as well go all the way. However, the spookiest thing in physics is the idea that consciousness itself is the quantum field. Now, this is kind of abstract. It was in the movie What to Believe. Most of you probably have seen the movie. But I want to try to make this a little clearer than the movie did. And if you feel a little lost, don't worry. I'm going to use some analogies to make it pretty easy to understand. But in the movie, they were shooting these electrons through a slit. And they're arriving at the back wall. And there's a nice, neat line on the back wall, one line. And there was an eye watching. The eye represented consciousness. Now, they took away the eye, and all of a sudden there were 16 lines in the back wall. How can one line become 16? That doesn't make any sense. Well, what science has found is that energy and matter are the same thing. Two different parts of the same coin, heads and tails. Except that when you have consciousness, it collapses energy waves into particles. So without consciousness, you can't have particles. So what happens in this experiment was you took away the consciousness, then the energy waves hit each other and caused interference. Like, for instance, if you drop a couple of pebbles in a pond, they create waves, and the waves hit each other, and then they create new waves, and then these new waves create new. Pretty soon you got 16 waves. So what they've discovered is, without consciousness, you can't have particles. Without particles, you can't have people. Without people, you can't have stars and galaxies. In other words, you can't have a universe without some kind of consciousness collapsing energy waves into particles. Now, I just wonder who that consciousness might be. I think in a roundabout way, physics has discovered God. They'll never say it like that, but a lot of individual physicists say, look, we discovered God. That's probably the reason why 80% of all physicists believe in a higher power. Interesting enough. But here's the deal, we got consciousness. Is our consciousness the same kind of consciousness that created this whole universe? And I can say with absolute certainty, there's well over 1,000 studies that prove that our consciousness also has those same capabilities. Now, I like to delineate them out in about 4 different groups to make it easy to understand. The first group is the prayer research, which, by the way, Unity Church has been an active participant in. In fact, one of the reasons why I like Unity Church so much is that they believed in their message so much so that they subjected it to scientific scrutiny by participating in prayer research studies, one of which I'll talk about in just a few minutes. And the second group of research studies is the studies that shows that people meditating can actually change and influence in a beneficial way the outside world. And the third group of research studies is the research studies that shows that we can know things before they happen. And the fourth group is the research studies done by Princeton researchers that shows that consciousness can even influence machines. Far out kind of stuff. So let's start with the prayer research. Now, we're all familiar with the prayer research. It started off way back in the 80s. They'd pray for one ward of the hospital. They wouldn't pray for the surrounding wards. And the ward they pray for would get well faster, have less need for antibiotics, have better quality of life, and in some cases less deaths than the surrounding wards. And they probably did about 10 or 15 of these in a short period of time. And scientists poo-pooed this early research. They said that what was really happening, the people doing the praying happened to pick the ward of the hospital that had the best doctors and the best nurses. And the people doing the praying had an uncanny knack for figuring out which of those wards had the best doctors and best nurses. They were really, really good at it. Of course, I'm being facetious. Now, eventually in 1988, they did the first double-blind study. Now, double-blind is as good a research as you can get. It's, they randomly assign people to groups. You pray for one group, you don't pray for the other group. And they randomly assign them throughout the whole hospital. And then that way they can't say it's all in one ward. And guess what? Same result as the other prayer research. And so they did 250 of these. That's a lot of research. Eventually scientists, okay, there is something to prayer. But what prayer really is it's the power of positive thinking. But is prayer just the power of positive thinking, or is it something else? Interesting question. Now, this brings us to one of my favorite studies, done by Unity Church, by the way. It's a triple-blind study. What's a triple-blind study? Well, a triple-blind study is, let's say I'm sick, and Reverend Mindy and Reverend Nikki are praying for me. And I get well faster because they're praying for me. But here's the interesting twist. They didn't tell me they were praying for me. So if they don't tell me they're not praying for me, then I can't know it. I can't have positive thoughts about it, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. So what they did, Unity Church is behind this, by the way. They took a hospital in Kansas City, which is the home of Unity. They prayed for everybody, or at least 50% of the people that entered a hospital in a 6-month period. And they randomized the groups, and even the doctors and nurses didn't know there was a prayer study going on. So nobody knew they were in a prayer study. And guess what? Same results as the other prayer research, which proves that prayer is something different than just positive thinking. You don't have to have positive thinking for it to work. This is huge. Then they redid the experiment in Colombia. And this one had a couple interesting twists. It was a triple blind again. They had people in America praying for people in Korea. So somehow the prayers had to go through molten rock and whatever else in the middle of the world and arrive at the right person in Korea. And it was a women's in vitro fertilization clinic. And again, the women did not know they were being prayed for. It was triple blind. And what they found was the women who were being prayed for had a 50% greater chance of getting pregnant than the women who weren't being prayed for. Brings up a whole new dimension to the idea of immaculate conception, but we won't touch that. So, but the interesting thing about prayer, and perhaps the most spookiest kind of thing, is the fact that there's no energy emanating from our brain that can account for these amazing results. There's no energy. It's very weak. In fact, it doesn't get past our skull bones. So how can praying for people 100 feet away, much as 1,000 miles away, work? It's one of those spooky action at a distance kind of things that Einstein was talking about. It's one of those quantum things. It's beyond time, space limitations. Okay? Second group of research studies is research studies that I was involved with. This is a meditation, transcendental meditation. We started these studies way back in the 1980s. I was the first person getting these studies published. And we got them published in mainstream journals, even more amazing. What we found was that people meditating could actually make the outside world a better place by reducing crimes, auto accidents, and even suicides. Suicides. This is huge, by the way. We're having well over 100 suicides a day in this country. People are not feeling safe, as you were talking about. So this is huge. So we did these studies, did 20 of them. We were so confident at work that we decided to waltz into Washington, D.C. and do a demonstration project where we took 4,000 transcendental meditators in, and we actually sat there and meditated for 6 weeks. And we talked to the mayor, who was Mayor Barry. He was the cocaine mayor. He was rehabilitated by then. And then we told the police chief, we told the newspapers. We were that sure it was going to work. And if it didn't work, I'm sure they would have poo-pooed all of our old research. But it did. And what we did, we all get into a big, huge ballroom, all 4,000 of us, and we meditated there. We start about 7:30 or 8 in the morning, go all the way to about 1. Then meditate starting about 3 till about 7. And while we're there, of course, the crime rates went way down. Now, everybody, I've had hundreds, probably thousands of people talk to me about this. And they say, how did you do it? How did you reduce crimes? You must have been thinking about crimes in some way in order to reduce crimes, right? You're right. No is right. No is right. We never once thought about crimes. How can you reduce crimes without thinking about it? That doesn't make any sense. Or does it? Maybe God already knows what you want. You don't have to think what you want, because when you think what you want, you're wanting something. And when you want something, you're coming from a place of lack. You're attracting lack. A beautiful quote, Charles Fillmore. Surrender the results. Surrender the results. Because when you get out of the way, you let the divine flow through us. You're connected with the divine, the quantum, you could say. You can't get to the quantum by trying to get there. It's everywhere, but you can't get there by trying. This is the ultimate dilemma. So we use quantum field technology to do this. Now, the third group of research studies was proof that we can know things before they happen. It was actually done by accident. A study done about 12 years ago. And it was a psychic experiment. It was kind of like a bunch of TVs were there. People were in front of each TV. And every 8 seconds, a new photograph would come up on the screen. And the object was to guess the photograph that was coming up. And it was one of 2 different types. A very gruesome morgue photo, a very positive nature scene. That's all they had to guess, was it positive or negative. They couldn't guess. But lucky for us, that wasn't the end of the story. Because the gruesome one, the people in morgues were so very gruesome, they decided to hook people up to a lie detector, similar to a lie detector test. It's called the GSR machine. And it measures anxiety in the skin, in the body. And what they anticipated was there'd be a spike of anxiety every time the negative photo was presented. But they did indeed find a spike. But it didn't happen after the negative photo was presented. It happened before the negative photo was presented, and not before the positive one. In other words, our body knew it was going to happen before it happened. Remember the old adage, I knew it in my gut? A lot of truth to that. Of course, nobody believed the experiment, so they redid it in a different laboratory. They couldn't trust the laboratory they were in. Same results. Then they looked inside the brain using an MRI. The whole brain would light up with anxiety about 4 seconds before the negative photo was presented. This is huge. But nobody did anything with it until about 2 years ago. A very famous psychologist by the name of Dr. Bennett. And he's in every psychology textbook. I've taught a bunch of psychology classes, so I can say for sure that it works, that he's one of the most famous psychologists. And he decided to revisit it. He did the experiment 10 times. 9 of them came out significant. That the chance of that happening by sheer chance alone is 1 in 4 billion. He submitted this to the Journal of Social Psychology, and the editors decided to publish it, even though they didn't believe the results. As a matter of fact, they wrote a whole big thing about it and said, we don't believe the results. He must have made a mistake, but we can't figure out what he did wrong. So meanwhile, psychology is going through this big, huge turmoil. But one of the quotes on the journal, like, goes, how can we know things before they happen? It doesn't make any sense. Welcome to the quantum age, psychology. Beyond time, space, limitations. The last group of research study is even more far out. This was done by Princeton engineers and scientists. And their theory was, okay, if our consciousness is quantum-based, beyond time, space, limitations, why don't we build a quantum-based machine and see if they can interact with each other? Makes sense. So that's what they did. They built a quantum-based machine using cosmic radiation from outer space. Cosmic radiation is very, very reliable. In fact, you can run atomic clocks on it. So the output from these machines is about 101010. Then they took college freshmen, had them concentrate on the machine to see if they could change the output from 1010 to 111 or 000. And they found after hundreds of thousands of trials, there was a significant effect, but very, very weak. Personally, I don't know how they managed it, because when I was a freshman in college, I could barely get out of bed, much less influence quantum field random number generator. But they were able to get these kids to do it. And then they had a brilliant idea. Let's put 4 or 5 of them together and see if the effect gets stronger. And that's what they found. The more people doing it, the stronger the effect. So they had a brilliant idea. Let's put these machines all over the world and see what happens. And what they found was, every time we're doing something together, with a collective consciousness, like Reverend Mindy was talking about, then the machine would go crazy, which means instead of 1010, they'd go 111 or 000. Let me give you some examples, like the opening ceremonies for the Olympics. We're doing things together, right? Everybody's watching those opening ceremonies. Billions of people do. Machines go crazy. Instead of 1010, they do 111 or 000. We don't know which direction they'll go, but they'll do one or the other. Katrina, the hurricane, the tsunami, OJ trial verdict. There's 250 of these things on their website. Well, the machines were going on during 9/11. 2 amazing things happened during 9/11. First of all, the machines went crazy for 4 straight days. That's never been seen before. But the main thing they found was the machines started going crazy 4 hours before 9/11 actually happened. That's before the terrorists even got in the airplanes. In other words, we as a collective knew what was going to happen before it happened. Again, quantum kind of stuff, beyond time, space limitations. So what we've done here is we've outlined well over 1,000 studies that have proven that our consciousness is beyond time, space limitations. We can create miracles. Now, we can come up with 4 conclusions, probably lots more than that, but that's all I'm going to talk about. The first one is life after death. If our consciousness is quantum-based, not brain-based, when the brain dies, our consciousness, or at least elements of our consciousness, doesn't have to die. Makes sense, right? Because how will we be able to do all this stuff if it was brain-based? Because there is no energy in our brain that can account for this. It's beyond that. And this is huge. This is one of the lifelong quests of humankind, is to find out whether there is life after death. Second major conclusion, that's connection, is the second major conclusion, is connection. Together, we are connected. We're not isolated in here. We're part of something else that's connected with everybody else around us. The research is conclusive about this. What we do in here can make a huge difference out there. Jill Bolte Taylor, Dr. Taylor from Harvard, neuroscientist. She had a stroke that shut down her left hemisphere. Instead of being in agony, she was in ecstasy. She had the traditional mystical experience. Now, what's the left hemisphere? Left hemisphere is the monkey part of our brain. Some way you've got to quiet this down. Having a stroke is not the best way. That is a way you can do it. And what hit me the most was, she said for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. For the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. Because she was connected with everybody. Sounds like something we should foster today. The third major conclusion is we're not helpless. Together we can make a bigger difference than we can alone. When we come together and we meditate together and pray together, we're not only helping ourselves, we're helping the world. We don't have to stop the wars out there, we got to stop the wars in here. We stop the negative thoughts in here, we're going to stop the negative thoughts out there. We got to start loving each other, even if we think differently. Even if we think differently. It's the only way it's going to work. Because we're influencing everybody with what we do and think. But that also gives us the power. We can change it. Just the other day, I saw a gay marriage study. 65% of the people in America are now for gay marriage. Just 2 years ago, 65 were against it, and all our presidents were against it. There's been a shift in the collective consciousness. It was not done through politics. It was not done through demonstration. There's a shift, a spiritual shift going on in America today. And you guys are leading this shift when you come together and pray together. You should be congratulating yourselves. You should be congratulating yourselves. You're helping make it happen. It's so wonderful to be alive today. It is. And lastly, but not least, everybody in here has doubts. Everybody in here has doubts. It is so refreshing to me, living in a time when science is proving spirituality and washes away these doubts. It's probably the most exciting times that I've ever been around. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, those of you who are on your feet, stay on your feet. And those of you who may want to think about getting up and singing, we're going to sing, but thank